What's good, everybody? So today we are going to be talking about 2.8 Wuthering Waves, and more importantly Chisa. She has been a rather hot topic of conversation, and a lot of discussion regarding her kit has made the rounds the last couple of days as people come back in excited for what is to come for 3.0 and beyond. And I think at this point, if you are someone who has been keeping up to date with some parts of the Wuthering Waves meta in combat or in fighting, a lot of people have been talking about Chisa is going to be the support of 3.0. She's the quote-unquote shorekeeper of the future for negative statuses, and there is a lot of truth to these claims seemingly. Obviously she's coming out, and by the time you watch this she's either already out or she's going to be coming out, and I kind of wanted to talk about her and what it means for negative statuses overall, and why her existence is both exciting but also leaves me kind of worried for 3.0 at the same time. And no, this is not a doom post. This is pure hypothetical speculation of how Chisa's existence is going to influence all the content, specifically endgame and meta and enemies and combat and all that for 3.0, and the direction Kuro might or could take. So let's get into what we have to discuss today. So obviously we have Chisa, and she is predominantly a sort of like support, healer, and a sub DPS kind of all rolled into one. She's kind of the whole package. She supposedly does a nice bit of damage. She can apply shields to your team. She could heal your team as well, but also can provide havoc, bane, and also some defense shred. It's ignore defense, but you guys know I like calling it death shred because it rolls off the tongue better. That's going to allow your team to do way more damage, but also more importantly, havoc bane itself is a negative status that I think stands out from all of the other negative statuses, and it's pretty clear why. Obviously we have havoc bane, we have fusion burst, we have glacio chafe, electro flare, and let's not forget aero erosion, which we're pretty familiar with at this point. All of these bar havoc bane is a negative status that can sort of deal damage in some way. The only one, or damage over time or whatever it may be, the only one that doesn't is havoc bane. Instead, havoc bane works by havoc bane loss, the defense of the inflicted target is reduced. Havoc bane stacks up to 3 times by default, with each stack reducing the target's defense by 2%. Havoc bane is the only negative status that acts almost like a buff to all the other negative statuses. Havoc bane is a negative status that is a debuff, but it feels like a buff for every other negative status type that exists, which means someone like Chisa can be put in a team with mixed attributes. You can have havoc bane with a fusion burst, with a glacio chafe, with electro flare, and she will make all of them stronger overall, which means there is a significant importance being placed on havoc bane itself, because it will raise the overall damage every single character that has a negative status will do, which makes it interesting, which makes me wonder what their design philosophy is going to be for 3.0 and beyond. As we all know, Shorekeeper came out in 1.3 and was very important for basically all kind of teams going forward in the past and throughout 2.x and 2. Whatever, and now we're kind of having a repeat of having this support unit coming out right now in this sort of like down period in between patches that seems to be going to be very useful for all these negative status characters, which I believe they're going to be coming out with in 3.0. I remember when they first released the negative statuses a while ago, and we all thought we'd get overwhelmed with them, that it was going to be the new meta, and all we got was aero erosion. And I think they were really testing out the limits of how they can create kits with these effects built into them, and now we have the full scale. They're all labeled out, they all have an accurate description that's detailed. They're really going to start ramping out these characters now in 3.0, and rather than have the mono teams that we kind of saw in 2.0 being the focus, in fact, obviously your Spectro teams with your Zanny, your Peeb, your Spectro Rovers, you had your Aero teams. There's quite a lot of Aero. We had our Fusion teams, and now we're probably likely, hypothetically, my opinion, don't take my word for gospel, don't cancel me, gonna have a lot of negative status characters actually coming out in 3.0, which places a lot of value on Chisa being being a character that can fit into multiple of these teams, because again, Havoc Bane works with every single negative status, but that also means one thing that worries me. Kuro has a very easy way of messing with the player base potentially for a number of reasons. For example, if Havoc Bane being present in a team can raise the overall damage of your teams, we might see cases where individual characters like solo damage might not be as high than we're used to, and we're gonna see a lot more discussions about that. Oh, this character seems really weak, but they're intended to be played with other negative status characters, maybe with Havoc Bane. So we're probably going to see a shift in how characters deal damage on their own versus in teams, versus with weapons, versus with their bis. We're probably going to see a lot more fluctuation on how it's going to happen, and probably going to see a lot more discussion surrounding that. But also because there is a lot that Havoc Bane can contribute to an overall like team damage at this point, it makes it very easy for Kuro to create enemies or new bosses that can really mess with the user base, that could like mess with the player base. For example, we all remember Zenless Zone Zero, right? We all remember Zenless Zone Zero, and we had the miasma situation, we had the defense shred situation, we had the rupture situation. We're all familiar, the wind shear, with how that ended up playing out. Wouldn't it be kind of ironic if Kuro Games went down the way of designing enemies that have insane amounts of defense that required, you know, sort of like defense ignore or defense shred characters for them to be like uber effective? Like, it really, the whole fact that Havoc Bane is playing such a pivotal like role in support characters and maybe with team building, we don't know, again, that's a hypothetical, means they could very easily mess with players by implementing mechanics and systems and bosses or enemies that really play into defense overall, and suddenly we enter in a true meta of Wuthering Waves. We haven't really had a proper like combat meta before, but this leaves the possibility of that happening. But of course, Kuro has a track record of not really tailoring to that too much. Obviously, we saw with the TOA updates that they are getting more comfortable with adding sort of like conditions and effects and restrictions to like teams and team building when it comes to doing your TOA with the Lost Tooth floors 3 and 4 with the Hazard Tower. So maybe that's the only time they're going to be changing up how mechanics work like that, and then surely they're not going to make enemies that are very much tailored to a certain meta in the game, are they? We could hope, right? We could hope. Like, my ideal scenario is they keep that stuff to the descriptions of TOA, and that's where it belongs, and they don't start making all these enemies that really kind of not force you, but make you feel like you probably should pick up some of these new characters. But we'll see. We'll see if, you know, we will start going down that route, because, of course, I think there's been a lot of people in the Wuthering Wave space that have criticized, like, Super Break from Honkai Star Rail, or the miasma in Zenless Zone Zero. Like, we've all kind of done it, and it's going to be very interesting if Kuro lends to go down the same route with this sort of stuff. So, it's we don't know. Again, this is why I'm saying this is all speculation. This is all hypothetical. I have no idea. But Havoc Bane being so seemingly important, let's not forget, Chisa has been one of the most like anticipated characters in WoA. Like, she was the most liked, given the most attention, and people have been excited for her. I like in like JP, for example, in Japan, and a lot of global have been really looking forward to her. Kuro knows that this character is gotta be really important, and instead of making her like a really strong DPS like Cardathea, like so many people wanted, instead they've made her kind of a really busted support for the future, probably, potentially, most likely. So she's gonna be featured in a lot of teams, again, probably, hypothetically, most likely. Which now leaves the question of how much importance are they going to play on Havoc Bane? How much importance are they going to be playing on Defense Shred? And what is their idea of creating more enemies and their mechanics in the future? So that's really my thoughts on the situation, and why I'm both excited, because I'm excited to finally see Kuro Games expand upon their their technical side of things of how they want to change up the landscape of combat in WoW and make it more interesting and make it different. But I'm also worried because they could very easily mess with the whole player base at the same time with some BS gimmicks, because that's not what I want to see. I don't want to see some BS gimmicks that kind of make you FOMO into getting certain characters, but they have the potential to be doing that now going forwards into 3.0. So let's see and find out. Chisa's coming out in a number of hours, or she's out by now, and I hope y'all are having fun with her. Yeah, you know what I mean, and having a good time. So I appreciate y'all. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, all that good stuff. Let me know your thoughts down below on what you think 3.0 is going to play out like. I appreciate y'all. I'll see you on the next one. Peace.
Twitch.tv/Captain Cabinetz, Captain Cabinetz.